to talk about your health. Living a primal lifestyle.
You know, we have Tom from Tampa on the phone. Hey, Tom. Good morning. It's bright and early now, huh?
Hey, Paige. Good.
Hi, Tom.
How you guys doing, Nico?
Doing great.
Good. Hey, your newsletter's outstanding, man. I'm telling you, man, it is outstanding. And so is the Primal Edge. I love that stuff. I'd never be without it. I mean, I've been on it now 3-4 months, man. I mean, it's just, I can't get over how good I feel.
Primal Edge is, people are raving about it. People who are trying it, they know because you can feel it.
Would not be without it.
Call now, toll free at 1-877-927-6648. Internationally at 727-445-1044. Now your hosts, Nico and Haan and Paige Clarke.
Well, good morning and welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle. I'm Paige Clarke, and this is where we explore a return to a more balanced, natural, wild world.
To recover our natural health and regain our rights and our freedoms, I'm Nico and Haan.
It's a beautiful day in downtown Clearwater, 75 degrees. It's a great day to have a new grandbaby.
Yeah. Yes, that's what you're up to, aren't you?
I sure am.
Yeah, you're going to be leaving here probably just before we even start.
Yeah, I'm
right?
going to have to duck out a little early today, so I'll keep you posted. But anyways, yeah, good stuff. So if you have any questions, you can contact me, Paige at TFNN.com.
And me, Nico at TFNN.com. And we're also taking your phone calls at
877-927-6648.
Okay, so grandbaby boy
Yes,
is
I have
coming.
another grandson, right? She's had a beautiful natural childbirth with her first baby, and everything's gone well. But we found out that she had her placenta previa, and placenta previa is where the placenta is low in the uterus.
Okay.
So it's actually covering.
So it blocks it?
It blocks so when the cervix starts to dilate, it inhibits it, and it can actually be life-threatening for both the parent, the mother, and the child, because it could dislodge, cause excessive bleeding. Mm-hmm. So we needed to get a C-section, and so they had to schedule it. Yeah, they didn't want her to go to her term, which was not for another basically 2 weeks.
Okay.
But because of that, they don't want.
She's pretty big. I mean, that picture you showed me. That was
she is, and so she's on her way to the hospital, and it's just around the corner, and I'm going to have to duck out early, because I can't miss anything. I got to be there.
That's definitely true.
So yeah, and you know what's interesting too, and I'd like to share it with those of you. We are going to take and process her placenta, which means that a doula or midwife does this often, and they dehydrate the placenta and prepare it in capsules for the mama. And it's very healing for the mother. It helps prevent postpartum depression.
Really?
And we did this last time, and it was wonderful. It kind of supports that, mothers have this huge crash of their hormones after birth.
Right.
And that's
postpartum depression.
Sure, and just everything. I mean, they've got a lot of demands, and so it really helps with milk production and supporting the mother. Mm-hmm. And the last time we had it done, the little doula came and picked it up. Mm-hmm. But this time, this one that we found, she said that she has to do it in our house. She wants,
wants all the
she
energy
doesn't she doesn't take control of the placenta. She'll meet me tonight.
Right.
And she'll bring her own equipment, and then she'll do it with me. So I'm going to try and do a little
do they
photo.
Process the placenta?
It's dehydrated.
Dehydrated. And then you take it as a capsule or something?
And then she prepares it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So she'll come over tonight and prepare, get it going, and then it'll dehydrate, and then tomorrow night she'll come over and encapsulate it.
That is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Now, how did that come about? I mean, is this an ancient ritual?
Well, if you stop and look at animals, the wild ones, right?
Right.
They often eat their placenta.
Right.
So the mother eats her own placenta as a form. You see a small animal, little cats or dogs, they lick it off.
But, definitely. I've watched many births.
Yeah. So I'm going to get a little bit more information. I hope you guys will enjoy hearing about that. And as we often explore here, sometimes when we go back, we're actually moving forward.
And we're getting some light from our chat room here, which is very nice.
Yes, thank you so much.
So it comes to mind that maybe our ancient ancestors did exactly what the animals were doing.
Yeah, and we really don't know, but I'm going to do a little research on it and find out. I think traditional cultures have realized that, birth is not normally a medical emergency. In this case, it is, and and this is why we're so thankful.
We're in modern age.
We're in the modern age, and we can, do things to, keep mama and baby safer. And we're excited. We were disappointed because she had it at the birthing center in the water. really, the whole family was there. But our hospital just around the corner here from the station, they do what they call gentle cesarean, and they allow the skin-to-skin contact. They're going to allow the delayed cord clipping. We're going to get our placenta to take it with us. So they've honored most everything that was really crucial for her on her birth plan. So
yeah, and I think many of the hospitals are stepping forward with that and allowing these things more and more.
I think so.
And
too.
I think it's to the advantage of of course, the mother and the child, but also just getting the knowledge out here that people are doing this, and that it is an emergency and it's a natural act. And I was one of the lucky people. I was the first husband in Detroit at Children's Hospital to be allowed to see my son being born. I couldn't do that with my 2 girls.
Right.
But my son was born in 1971, and I got to be in there with the cap and the gown and everything like that. And
that's neat. You were the first?
I was the first. And I cut the cord, and then there was a big splash in a 2-section thing in the Detroit News, showing the pictures of my wife's vagina and everything. So she wasn't too thrilled about that.
Really,
but,
really,
they showed everything in the things. I mean,
that's unusual.
Nothing sexual, of course.
Right.
It was the operation type of thing with where they had the pictures in there, and she goes, "Oh, there they are. The head is coming out, and you can see me."
Right.
And she wasn't too thrilled about that, but she was thrilled later on that it happened, and I was thrilled to be in there because that's an experience that I think every father should have. And assisting is a miracle, really. It's a miracle watching something come out of your body and being alive. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing thing.
The power, I tell you, of mothers, in the birth, just the strength, the birth of Avante was just amazing because we did have it in a birthing center. We were all there. And we just kind of went through the whole thing with her. It'll be a little different, but it's going to be great. We're excited.
It won't be in the newsletter, folks. But that's great. So what time is it scheduled for?
Well, sometime between 8:30.
Okay.
They're going to take her in. It was 9. So
you're going to meet her at the hospital, Morton Plant.
She's already there. She's there now.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, she's there now doing the prep and the paperwork.
Okay.
So.
And Morton Plant, one of the best hospitals in our area, for sure.
They sure are.
Maybe in the nation.
Feel lucky.
We've got some really good doctors there, for sure. Another thing I wanted to mention is that, your grandson now is 2.5, or 2.5.
He sure is.
Very healthy-looking boy. I mean, beautiful, beautiful child.
He is. I'm a little bit on the prejudice side.
Oh,
but
naturally.
I think
but when I look at that
agree.
kid, I think health because of the smile and the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You can really tell the life force in children.
Yeah.
It's just the thing, and they want things, and they really rely on us to guide them the way. So they're always big-eyed and looking at us. And one of the things I always remember, the Inuit people always say when the Board of Education of Canada went up to north of Canada and said to these people, you need to educate your children because otherwise how do your children learn? And the Eskimo says, they're with us and they watch us.
They're with us and they watch us. And you know what? That's what we got to remember. They're watching us all the time. So
we'll be right back, folks. The number here is 877-927-6648. Stick around.
Right back.
Welcome back to the show, folks. So I found this article says modern alcohol use linked to the heart chamber damage, arterial fibrillation in a new study. And this was done by the University of California, San Francisco. Researchers found that even moderate alcohol consumption may change the structure of the heart in ways that increase the risk of arterial fibrillation.
Not arterial, atrial. Atrial is actually a part of the heart versus
that's the left lower.
There's common evidence that modern alcohol, it may be a risk factor for this, but this is the most common heart rhythm disturbance in the world. And the mechanism by which alcohol may lead to this is unknown. Oops, there just went my mic.
You better clip that sucker back on.
Yeah, there we go. So this is very interesting because many of us have touted the health benefits of alcohol and used that as a reason to maybe have a little bit here or there or everywhere.
Yeah.
And so this is some research that we need to take a look at. It's interesting, though. Let's talk a little bit about the possible pathways between the alcohol and the atrial fibrillation.
Well, let's talk about what Gregory Marcus and his colleagues, they looked at the damage in the left atrium of the heart as a possible pathway between alcohol and atrial fibrillation, which is known as a risk factor for stroke. The irregular pumping of blood can lead to blood clots, which can travel to the brain and cause stroke.
Well, they looked at a group of about 5,000 adults, and they collected this research over several years. This is back at the Framingham Heart Study.
Right.
I mean, they looked at this. And they included echocardiogram, medical history, and self-reported alcohol intake. And the study participants, which were mostly white people in their 40s and 60s, they reported an average of just over 1 drink per day. And the overall rate of atrial fibrillation in the group was 8.4 cases per 1,000, meaning over a 10-year period, 8 out of 100 people were likely to develop the AFib. So,
and every additional drink was associated with a 5% increase in the yearly risk. Each additional drink per day also associated with a strategically significant 0.16 millimeter enlargement of that left atrium.
yeah, so that could be a sign of the physical damage to the heart. So what's kind of the takeaway on this?
Well, one of the things is they're talking about people drinking every single day, too. These are people who had like 1 drink a day. Some of them had 2 drinks a day. Some of them had 3 drinks.
Average.
So that was the average. So I think that's really maybe overdoing it. I don't think, there's a lot of cultures like the French that may have a drink every night.
Well, and I think the key thing with the French that we've seen is they often do it in association with some high-fat food.
Exactly.
Some cheese, some olives. So let's go on.
Okay.
There is a complex relationship between alcohol and heart health.
Yeah.
And so these new findings are shedding light that, there is perhaps no blanket advice on drinking, says this Dr. Marcus.
Yeah.
Because they see both sides, some information. There's been research that shows that moderate drinking can reduce the risk of heart attack while increasing the risk of atrial fibrillation. And he says they refer to this conundrum because in a study that was published earlier this year, they were looking at hospital admissions in dry and wet counties in Texas. And what they found was that the patients that were in counties that permitted alcohol, the sales were more likely to have AFib, but they were less likely to have heart attacks and congestive heart failure.
Yeah, alcohol's ability to protect and harm the heart likely operate in very different mechanisms and vary from person to person, Marcus said.
Yeah, so they're trying to decipher just what are these mechanisms, and this will help inform therapies for heart conditions and may ultimately enable physicians to give personalized advice.
Yeah, he says, I'm constantly trying to remind people that there are various forms of heart disease and not all related to heart attacks.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
He's a cardiologist.
Yeah, he's a cardiologist, right. So what he's saying is, AFib is a growing and important in our success in preventing heart attacks, in this kind of a thing. So I think, and when we saw this article, I've mentioned to you that at the Bulletproof Conference, Mark Sisson, who's the author and kind of the founder of the Primal Way, the Primal Blueprint, his book, when he was speaking, his whole talk was on what his new research that he's released in his newest book, Primal Endurance, is the need to train at a much lower heart rate. And that's, instead of the 220 minus your age, it's 180 minus your age. And he shared with us that
this is for long-term endurance, is what he's talking about. Keep it lower. Don't go so high. Maybe in a race you're doing it that way, but training should be at a 75%.
Right, to build cardiovascular health. He mentioned that he has AFib, and he believes that the reason he developed AFib was due to what he called chronic cardio, of high level, getting the heart rate up.
Yeah, and this reminds me of Jim Fixx, who I think it was in the 80s, maybe early 90s.
He was the runner?
He was a runner, marathon runner, very world-class runner, and had many books on running. and certainly one of my heroes. And I think he was age 57 or something like that. And this definitely was in the 80s that he just dropped dead on the trail. I mean, he had a heart attack on the trail. And
there's a lot. You know, Dr. Joel Wallach from Dead Doctors Don't Lie. We shared that a couple years ago about a lot of extreme athletes that whether it be mineral depletion, one of the thoughts.
Yeah. Well, he was a runner that would, you can go 4.5-minute miles, boom, during racing. And he would train at sub-5s. So I remember training at sub-6, and I thought for me, after a while, it was just really too much. I had to train at 7-minute miles, and it's just much better, and my times actually went up. I could do 6-minute miles during races and below. But this is one of the problems we have, and now we're finding out that endurance is supposed to be at a lower level if you're training, not during racing. That's a different story.
Again, that's almost like a sprint, right? You're doing it on occasion, but while you're working out, don't overdo it.
Right, and what we found out, too, is that we've got another method that we're using now, and this is this high burst where you go up and you go as fast as you can for short amounts of time, maybe 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, maybe as much as a minute, and then take a 30-second break in between.
Or
do
even,
that 10,
or even
20
long
times.
enough that your heart recovers.
Exactly. So you're recovering each time, and you're pushing it, but you're recovering each time, and this really helps your endurance a lot.
Yes, and in closing on that other article we were just talking about, the researcher Marcus said that what we also find is that people that believe that alcohol provides benefits tend to drink more. So again, it's about it's about really being aware that it can have some detrimental effects.
Well, there's a certain amount that you drink, and all of a sudden you feel the effects. You feel that buzz. And I think that's different with everybody depending on your weight and if you're used to it or not. Your metabolism may be different, and for me that's 2 drinks gets me a buzz. And the third drink starts to take me over the top, where if I'm doing it in the evening, the next morning I can feel the difference.
Yeah, in other words, if you feel it the next day, you had too much.
Exactly. That's the cue for me to say, hey, wait a minute, Nico, you're going down the wrong path.
Right. And there's a big difference, too, if you're eating food or not. So when we come back, we're going to share some other information. Some news.
We're going to take the other side.
Yeah, some news in Time magazine that says exercise may lessen some of the bad effects of alcohol and how it might cancel out booze. Let's take a look at it. We'll be right back after the break.
Well, I know one thing, too, is that if you take some Primal Edge, you're going to be better off no matter what. So please pick up some Primal Edge. $89 gets you to your door every single month.
And you can use Tiger Dollars.
Yes, you can. And
lucky you.
Pick up the Health Signals newsletter while you're at it, folks. See you. And welcome back.
Oh, I thought I was opening.
Yeah, I think you are.
That's all right. It doesn't matter. We're both opening. Anyways, so we've been talking about alcohol. Exercise may lessen some of the bad effects of alcohol, according to an article in Time magazine or time.com. Says they hint that some of the negative effects that we were just discussing may actually be offset by what you do and how you move. So some of the research shows that in the area of heart disease, and as we talked about, heart disease is different than just the heart attack. I mean, there's different ways that our arterial or cardiovascular system is affected.
Well, these studies, mostly on alcohol and health outcomes like death or heart disease or cancer, have looked at drinking in isolation from other lifestyle factors. That's a pretty artificial scenario, since a person's drinking habits often go along with other lifestyle behaviors such as diet, exercise, and whether they smoke or not. Few studies have looked at how alcohol works in a more real-world situations, how drinking affects people who exercise compared to the ones who don't or who aren't physically active.
And I do think those other lifestyle factors are a big thing. In fact, I have one of my clients called me. This is kind of interesting to share. She's been working to overcome some lifestyle things like drinking and smoking. And new healthcare company that she has put her in a program that is giving her benefits if she makes these lifestyle changes, and if she proves that she's given it no nicotine, they'll lower her premium.
Oh.
So, and I was discussing that with her, and I said, well, how's it going with the alcohol? She goes, it's funny. Now that I don't now that I don't smoke, I don't even want it. I've been drinking green matcha tea. So I think this is what we see.
Definitely an association there.
Yeah, many of these things we snowball,
Well, I remember,
together.
I smoked as a kid when I was 17. It was cool to
so
smoke
did I.
and a lot of
I did
pressure.
too.
So I smoked, and I remember then going to see my friends play in a bar, and I was trying to quit smoking. but at the bar I'd have a cigarette. In those days, they allowed smoking inside in a bar. And when you have a drink, automatically you go for that cigarette.
Well, the trigger, those two chemicals kind of work together.
Yeah, so
you know?
I think the opposite is true. Is then you give up smoking, and then you're really not going to the alcohol because you know that's one of the triggers. So you're going to stay away from it automatically. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
So here was another study. We just cited one earlier that was discussing how drinking alcohol could really stimulate atrial fibrillation. This report in the British Journal of Sports Medicine says that they looked specifically at the interaction between alcohol consumption and exercise to see how the behaviors affected each other when it came to mortality. And they studied more than 36,000 middle-aged men and women for an average of nearly 10 years, and they tracked their death rates and causes of death.
Yeah, and not surprisingly, found that drinking itself is linked to higher rates of early death from any cause as well as death from cancer. And the more alcohol is consumed, the higher risk of early death. But when they layered in the amount of exercise people reported, he found that those who weren't
only those that weren't physically active, meaning they didn't meet the requirements of 150 minutes of moderate to intense exercise, showed similar patterns of high mortality.
Yeah, and among those who reported getting the recommended amounts of activity, their death rates were slightly lower as long as they drank with the recommended guidelines, one to two drinks per day.
Mm-hmm.
People who drank beyond those amounts at levels considered dangerous for their health showed higher risks or rates of death from any cause. That's any cause included, or cancer, regardless of how much they exercise. So there's a certain limit there, and I kind of gave you my own scenario, and that seems to fall in with this guideline here.
The study found only a weak benefit in lowering deaths from heart-related issues among those who exercise. So, long story short, it really has to do with, managing that threshold. We all know what our threshold is.
Yeah.
We were talking about that on the break. And managing that threshold. So,
well, I have an interesting story because I have one of my good friends, Tom, who does Pilates at my place, and a black belt at Gracie Baja Clearwater. And years ago, when he was like 10 years old, he started in Wushiru Karate, which is a high form of karate with doing a lot of contact. So something that you can't do most of your life. So when he was, I think he was 18 years old, he went to Okinawa to train there at one of the dojos. He says, there's so many dojos there. So he goes into the dojo and they work out, and these professors work out all day, and they all go and drink later on. They open a bottle of scotch and they all sit around every night and drink.
Right.
I mean, so exercise definitely has a benefit to that with the alcohol. Definitely don't recommend drinking like they did, but these people drank. I think a lot of it has to do with getting rid of some of that pain because of the high contact karate.
Yes,
it's not like jiu-jitsu at all.
So getting back to this particular study in the British Medical Journal, the British Journal of Sports Medicine, among the physically active, there was no increase in cancer and all-cause mortality up to hazardous levels of alcohol consumption. What's more, there didn't seem to be a difference in mortality rates among the physically active, whether they exercise at the minimum or whether they exercise more. It looks like there is a kind of ceiling on the protective effect of physical activity. So again, I think it's...
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense too.
I found another article from CNN. It says exercise can cancel out the booze, the study says. Exercising cancels out the higher risk of cancer death from drinking alcohol, the study found. Moderate physical activity also reduced the inflated risk of all-cause mortality brought about by drinking, the researcher says.
Yeah, actually, it's the same study. That's interesting. This is how two different news. They're citing the same Stamatakis, who was the senior author of the study. So the observations over time that they gathered based on some of these health studies, kind of gave them a little bit more information that across these three categories: people who are not very active, those who do moderate amount of exercise, and those who do the most.
Yeah.
And then they looked at the alcohol. So
there was another interesting fact that the more alcohol units drunk each week, the greater the risk of death from cancer, even when a person drank less than the recommended maximum per week. So the recommended weekly maximum was defined as 8 standard drinks for men or for women and 12 for men.
Over a week.
Over a week.
Right. And the results showed that occasional drinking alcohol sometimes, but not every week, was associated with a reduced risk of death from cardiovascular disease among physically active people. there you go.
And they considered moderate exercise about 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity. So they've been studying mostly aerobic activity, which is more of the low, not so high activity like endurance we were talking about before. We're talking about the aerobic, meaning with oxygen, which means your heart is pumping nice, steady pace.
Mm-hmm. So really the researcher kind of surmised this to say that this is yet another reason to promote physical activity and make the environment more conducive to physical activity and generally empower people to sit less, And we've talked about that.
Yep.
And remember, I'm thinking about the Bulletproof Conference, the stand-up desks. They were booked. Everybody was standing around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exercising the recommended amount appears to wipe out completely the inflated risk of cancer death resulting from alcohol, he said. One thing exercise did not moderate, though, was death risk among those who rank at harmful levels. Over 20 U.S. standard drinks per week for women and 28 standard drinks for men. That's a lot of drinking alcohol, I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's probably not wise. And I think we pay attention to our bodies. If you feel different in the morning, then you had too much. I think that's pretty obvious.
And also, these are observational studies, so it suggests a relationship. This is not hard science, folks.
Folks, I'm going to be dashing out, going to go get my new grandbaby and enjoy, so we'll see you next time. And
I'll be back.
Yeah, Nico will wrap it up and hold down the fort.
Yeah, give me a call if you want. The number here is 877-927-6648. Welcome back to the show, folks. So Paige is running over to the hospital. This is really cool. One of the things I want to talk about, the things have changed so much since we were hunter-gatherers and we started changing our lifestyle to be into larger communities. And now that last 150 years or so, we're in what we call the industrial age, where things have really changed and the world really looks a lot different than it used to look. We used to be in a wild environment, then we kind of got into what I call maybe a tamed environment. That we started farming and we started using animals and things like that. Not too bad, but we really did change our food. But now we're more in the tech environment where we've got the industrial part, but we also got so many things that are going on in the airways all around us. We've got more and more chemicals that are in our environment, and we take them in not only through our skin, we take them in inhaling it, and also through our water, and then of course the stuff eventually ends up in our food. No matter what you're eating, doesn't matter if you're eating animals or plants, the pollution is there. And some of the things that pop up is kind of new diseases. One of the things that really started showing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was people that have weaker immune systems and more brittle bones. And this really started showing up in the 90s, I think, because that's when Big Pharma came up with the first bone drug. Now millions of people are on this another concoction of some kind. So one of the things is that we really stopped exercising in a natural way. We used to have to walk a lot. We used to have to go chasing things and gathering things, and this put us into a real favorable light as far as our bone health and muscle health. So if you're just walking and gathering, you're using a lot of different muscles. You're stooping up and down, just sitting on the floor alone. If you sat on the floor every single day, you'd have to get up and down every day. And when that stopped, you'd either have to have somebody help you, or you'd probably just wither away. It's definitely, if you were by yourself, no family around, then it wouldn't be too good for you. And a lot of times I remember seeing in movies where the American Indian, so to speak, would leave the older people behind. And this was usually a voluntary thing. If you read books on our ancient ancestors, is that sooner or later, one of the old people say, okay, don't take me along anymore. I'm a burden because you have to move with the food and I can't move anymore. So I'm going to sit under this tree and I'll slowly die. And a lot of times maybe the mate stayed with them, that type of thing. But so today's remedy for this is really our exercise programs. But you can really incorporate this in your daily life if you wanted to, too. I mean, imagine you go to the mall and you park at the farthest point and you walk to the mall. Inside the mall, of course, there's a lot of walking to be done. And in fact, we see a lot of people just go to the mall because maybe it's hot outside or maybe it's raining or snowing or whatever the case may be. You're in the mall because you've got a controlled environment. But maybe it's better to go out of the controlled environment. A lot of benefits to being out in things that maybe you're a little bit uncomfortable with, and it becomes more natural when you do this. This morning I was on my way to work, and it was drizzling a little bit, and I saw several runners out there. Some of them, the men, even just showing their skin, nothing on top, you know. So I remember when I was a runner, some of the best days, especially if it timed perfectly. You go out for that run, you get nice and warm and everything like that, and you go out there, and now you're really halfway through, and all of a sudden you get the rain, and it was just a relief, you know. So you can really, you know, we can tolerate things that we kind of just say, you know, it's raining, I'm not going to go out, I'll get the paper later, or whatever the case may be. I think it's much better to get into these elements and get used to it. I think it puts more onus on your body to adapt, and that's what we know. Adaptation is the reason why we're so successful as human beings. We've adapted to everything. Imagine now we're adapting to a polluted world, pollution from everywhere, and we're adapting. And you know, part of this show is really about learning how to adapt and getting these poisons out. So we've got things like the sauna that I'm doing, and things like the coffee enemas that I'm doing, and all kinds of different regimes. And this is, I think, what the Bulletproof Coffee seminar or conference was really about, is biohacking is a way of gaining back what we lost because of our technology, because of our industrial lifestyle, and because of our agriculture. So we have to compensate for this. We're smart human beings, and we have ways of doing this. Basically, what's getting in the way these days is much more of the type of economy that we have, because we have a capitalistic system, and capitalism in itself is great, but capitalism that stresses winning at all costs and getting as much profit as you can at all costs, no matter what the downturn is. And we see this in certainly the banks and things like that. It doesn't matter what the cost is. It doesn't matter that Volkswagen did all these things with the EPA because they gained much profit. And now, of course, they're paying those fines, but you've got to think that somewhere along the line that's going to come back, and that money is going to be taken out of the people buying the cars sooner or later. It has to, because they still have to have that profit, don't they? There's nowhere along. And one of the tragedies in our modern society is that we have profit before our health, profit before our well-being, profit before just about anything else. And that's a problem I see in the political world. And this is something that we as human beings are going to have to overcome if we want to survive into the future, because I think things are going to be changing over the next several years. You heard me talk about the Thunderbolts project and the electrical universe theories, and they are stating that we're going to have a change in the climate over the next 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 years, going into a much colder climate, and we're going to have to adapt to that. So not only do we have to deal with the pollution, and this morning I just read in the paper that the red tide is in the Pinellas County area now. So this is another sign of different kinds of pollutants that are in the air. I've had this sticky membrane kind of slimy thing in my throat for maybe 6 weeks now. And it's slowly going away, but boy, I'm telling you, it's a battle, and you know, I don't like to take drugs and stuff like that, so I'm trying to do things as natural as possible and still able to live my life the way I want to live. It ain't easy, I'll tell you that. But so muscling up is what this article is about, and it really talks about that we need to use our muscles, and as you get older, you get a little certain decrease. They're saying about 5%, once you reach 40 years old, you lose about 5% of your bone health each year if you're just going into the, I just lost my train of thought, just got a text from somebody. Well, anyway, what they want to do is they say there's a few things that we can do. In one study, 21 frail older people took part in a strength training program for 11 weeks, and their muscle mass increased about 60%. And additionally, they had better balance, better strength, better physical ability, making them less likely to fall. one of the horrors that I always have this picture of somebody, falling down and you can't get up. It's not something I wanted to do. One of the main reasons I took jiu-jitsu up for that very reason. So we're coming up on a break here. I'd like to remind you to pick up some Primal Edge daily supplement, and also please pick up my newsletter. I've got another one all ready to go. Be out Tuesday along with the new exercise. So if you go to the top of the TFNN file here, you look under breaking news, you'll find the Primal Living Balancing Training Routines. Really important to do balance. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the show. I wanted to point out in my Health Signals newsletter, I got this new study confirms solar activity has a direct impact on Earth's cloud cover. Of course, something the Electric Universe has been saying for quite a few years. And somebody at Dead End says, please share your knowledge of the Florida mosquito killer spraying in the past 2 months. Yeah, of course, they've been spraying everywhere in Florida for the mosquitoes because of the Zika virus, and that stuff is in the air. Nice thing about the chemicals that they use, they do dissipate pretty quickly. But yeah, it's a terrible problem here, and I think this does directly affect us. So not only do we have mosquitoes around here that can harm us through the Zika, perhaps, and we also have many other things too. So who knows? One of the things I wanted to mention too, that as we've gotten more and more into a modern state of living with the technology, with the industrial age, the agriculture, we've really lost touch with our environment. And this is one of the things that our ancient ancestors were really big on. In fact, they have a term called that, if you're looking at yourself, we call this the short body. And if you're looking at how we are spiritually and connected to the environment, they call this the long body. And most of the things that they talk about is that they talk about the long body, which means that not just you, but what's around you, which means the people, which means the environment, of course. And what it does mean is that we've really lost touch with that. In fact, we really stress here us. When we speak, we talk about us. We don't talk about we as a society, we as a community, we as a part of our environment. No way would our ancient ancestors disturb the soil. They tried to have at least amount of disturbances to the environment as possible. Heck, our American Indians used teepees, which was an ingenious device, highly technical device that would stand up to hurricane force winds practically, very, very stable. Of course, you're grounded, and massive amounts of protection, easy to put up, easy to carry with you. And because our ancient ancestors moved with the food, this was very necessary. And if you look at the steppes of the east, the Russian areas, Mongolia and things like that, that's what the people do too. They follow the animals around. In fact, there's a nice article that I found years ago that mentioned how the people on the steppes were always following, and then at the end of the route, where they were the most southern, they'd be doing the slaughtering of the animals. And we do it the opposite. We go get the animal, we bring it back, and then we slaughter it. So it's a whole different philosophy. So just that philosophy alone, I think, makes a huge difference. Today we live more of what we call an alien environment, one that challenges every dimension of our experience. This new world offers more comfort, more opportunity, incredible wonders, but it also causes us stress. They cause lifestyle diseases for many, pain and unhappiness, sedentary lifestyle, artificial light, social ambiguity, toxic food, chronic noise take up an enormous toll on our body. Probably we don't realize most of this thing that's happening to us because of all these pollutions. So then when we sit for 10 minutes alone and quiet, that's the uncomfortable part, not the part that we're getting hit with every single day. It's just something I want you to think about. We're getting used to these things. We tolerate these things because this is the way we think it has to be. but there are other ways, and that's what we're trying to explore here on Living a Primal Lifestyle, is trying to find that, get the peace back into our lives. I think that's really important. So thanks a lot for sticking around. Congratulations to my co-host, Paige. He's going to have a little baby grandson coming up in the next few hours, so a lot of healing light we're going to throw at her, and wish them a good luck and a new person in this world. Let's clean it up for them. Thanks for sticking around, folks.
You're watching Tiger TV.